Salvias are some of the best-selling plants in garden centres. The bees absolutely love them, they flower all summer long, but they can be a little bit tender. So I'm going to give you a few tips to show you how to get them through our British winters. Some salvias are hardier than others, so it's worth checking at the garden centre which cultivar you've got and how hardy it is. But if you've already got them in the garden and you can't quite remember what the cultivar is, then don't worry. You can give yourself an insurance backup. And the way to do that is to take some cuttings. And it's the end of the summer now, so it's a perfect time for taking cuttings. You're looking for a piece of material around about 6 inches long and ideally without a flower on the top. So what you want to do is cut just below a pair of leaves there. So I'm going to just snip that off like that. Here we are, look, so here's another potential cutting piece here. This one has got a flower, but what I'm going to do is just snip that flower off like that, because we don't want the energy going into that flower production. And then, as before, just snip just below those 2 pair of leaves there, like that. So once you've got your material, you then need to pop it straight into a plastic bag and seal it up so it doesn't lose too much moisture. Then you can head off to the potting bench and get them potted up. Another way of protecting your salvias from the frost is by applying a really good thick layer of mulch, ideally 15 to 20 centimetres around the base of the plant, because what that will do is insulate the roots from the frost. Sometimes the variety Salvia Hot Lips, which is the red and white variety, sometimes you'll see those flowers turning all white. But don't worry if that does happen, because usually that's a sign that it hasn't got quite enough light or it's a bit too dry. So chances are the following spring and summer they get more light and they'll turn back to red and white. After a few years growth, you might find that your salvias need a bit of shaping up, just a bit of pruning, haircut, just to keep them nice and tight, and that's best done in the spring. And ideally don't take any more off than about a third in one go. When it comes to choosing a pot for your cuttings, ideally you want a pot that you've got lying around in the shed, so you're reusing them rather than a brand new one because you're not wasting plastics. And I'm going to go for a small 9 centimetre pot. You can see my hand there. It's just a small pot because cuttings don't need lots of compost for them to root into, and it saves you wasting compost, and it also makes sure you've not got loads of compost sitting around wet, soaking wet where the cuttings are in there. So the compost I'm going to use is a seed and cutting compost, which is much better for taking cuttings rather than your multi-purpose compost, because it's a lot finer for the cuttings to actually get rooted into. Now, this bag here, as you can see, been in the garden centre and it's already quite wet because it's been out in the rain already, so I won't need to water this before. However, if you were to buy your bag of compost and it's very dry, then ideally what you need to do is water it before you put your cuttings into it, because it will just help with the absorption. Now I'm going to firm this compost down a little bit like that. Just keep it a little bit underneath the surface, and then that's ready for the cuttings. Okay, so got our compost all set. Now we'll get our cutting material out the bag. On that. Put that on there. Right. So we've got a couple there. Now what I'm going to do is just cut off first these lower leaves here, because we don't need those. Get those out of the way. And what you're looking for from the length of cutting point of view is around about 10 centimetres, something like that, which is, if you stretch your fingers out, something like that is about right. So I'm going to cut this lower piece off. And I'm going to just move these lower leaves here, because we don't need those. Cut those there, because we don't want them sitting in the compost itself. And then you see this little bit here, that's where those leaves were. In that section there, that's where all the hormones are that will produce roots from a plant's point of view. So that's the bit we want in contact with the soil. So if we cut just below that area, right, quite off, then that little bit there is perfect and ready to go straight into the compost. So I'm going to just place that into the compost, but I'm not going to put it right on the edge, because right on the edge of the compost, it's much more likely to dry out, but also there's a fluctuation in temperature as well. So I know that it used to be done that way, but actually you just want to bring it in just slightly from the edge and just pop it down like that. Just firm it in a little bit. In a pot this size, you'd probably put maybe 2 or 3 cuttings in there. And just remember to keep the compost moist the whole time. If they dry out, they won't like that very much at all. And then you just keep them in a warm space, either indoors or in a greenhouse. And then eventually you'll notice some of the roots starting to come out the bottom. And then in the springtime, by the time all the frost has gone, late spring, they're ready to plant out.